Welcome to True Crime Threads, where we unravel the chilling stories that lurk beneath the surface. In this heartbreaking case, a Christmas obsession leads to a tragic murder. The town of Wintervale was known for its festive charm. Each December, the community transformed into a Christmas wonderland with snow-draped streets, twinkling lights, and the iconic Wintervale Santa, who brought joy to children and adults alike. This year, a man named Charles, who played Santa for over a decade, seemed more committed than ever to spreading holiday cheer. But behind his rosy cheeks and booming laughter was a dark secret brewing. Wintervale was a close-knit community where everyone knew each other, and Charles had become a beloved figure over the years. His dedication to the role of Santa went beyond the costumes and the annual parade. Charles often volunteered his time at schools, hospitals, and community centers, making sure everyone in town felt the magic of Christmas. Parents trusted him with their children, and his cheerful demeanor made him seem like the perfect embodiment of holiday spirit. However, very few people knew much about his personal life. Charles lived alone in a modest house on the edge of town, rarely socializing outside his duties as Santa. He kept to himself, and while some found him mysterious, others assumed he simply preferred solitude. Among the many families in Wintervale, one had caught Charles's particular attention: the Mortons. Rosa Morton was a widowed mother with 2 young daughters, who had recently moved to Wintervale to start fresh after her husband's tragic death. Rosa was kind, warm, and well-loved by those who knew her. She quickly became an active member of the community, attending local events and volunteering at her daughter's school. Charles had first met Rosa at a town holiday party the previous year and had been captivated by her ever since. Her cheerful smile and nurturing nature made her stand out in a way Charles couldn't ignore. At first, his interest in Rosa seemed harmless, even admirable. He would stop by her house occasionally to drop off small gifts for her daughters or offer to help with yard work. Rosa, always gracious, appreciated his kindness, viewing him as a supportive neighbor and friend. But Charles's intentions were far from innocent. What began as friendly gestures soon turned into a fixation. He started finding excuses to visit her more frequently, often under the guise of helping with holiday preparations. He offered to hang lights, set up decorations, and even babysit her daughters when she needed help. To the outside world, it seemed like Charles was simply a caring individual spreading holiday cheer, but beneath his Santa suit, a dangerous obsession was growing stronger with each passing day. As the holiday season progressed, Rosa began to notice subtle yet unsettling changes in Charles's behavior. His gestures of kindness, once charming and helpful, began to feel intrusive. It started with small gifts left on her porch: a festive bouquet of flowers one day, a box of chocolates another. While Rosa initially appreciated these surprises, they soon became excessive. Nearly every day, something new would appear at her door, and it didn't take long for the nature of the gifts to grow more personal. Among them was an intricately wrapped package containing a locket with her initials engraved on it. While thoughtful at first glance, the gesture struck Rosa as odd, especially since she had never shared her initials with Charles. The most unsettling moment came when Rosa opened one of the envelopes accompanying the gifts and found a photograph of herself. It was an image she didn't recognize, taken from a distance through her living room window. Her unease grew, but Rosa hesitated to confront Charles. She told herself he was just an overly enthusiastic neighbor who perhaps misunderstood boundaries. However, her instincts told her there was more to his actions than misplaced kindness. As weeks went on, Rosa noticed other peculiarities. Whenever she stepped outside, she often felt as though she was being watched. Once, while taking out the trash, she glanced toward the street and thought she saw Charles's silhouette lingering near the corner. He quickly turned and walked away, leaving Rosa unsettled. She shared her concerns with a close friend, who suggested she set clear boundaries, but Rosa wasn't sure how to address the situation without causing offense. Charles, after all, had been nothing but helpful on the surface, and she feared overreacting. Behind closed doors, Charles's obsession with Rosa was spiraling further. What began as admiration had morphed into an unhealthy fixation. He spent countless hours parked near her house, watching her every move, convinced that fate had brought her into his life. In his mind, Rosa represented everything he had ever dreamed of: a perfect family, love, and happiness. He began to rationalize his actions, telling himself that his persistence was necessary to win her over. The breaking point for Rosa came one evening when she returned home from work to find something chilling. Draped over her living room chair was a Santa costume, identical to the one Charles wore every holiday season. She was certain she hadn't left her door unlocked, but there was no sign of forced entry. Fear gripped her, but without proof of wrongdoing, she was unsure what to do. The cheerful holiday season Rosa once adored was quickly turning into a nightmare, with Charles's actions casting a dark shadow over her life. On Christmas Eve, Wintervale was alive with festive energy. Families gathered in the town square for the annual tree lighting ceremony, an event that symbolized the unity and joy of the community. Charles, dressed as Santa, stood at the heart of the celebration, handing out gifts and posing for photos with eager children. His cheerful demeanor seemed more pronounced than ever, and the townspeople, unaware of the darkness lurking beneath his facade, praised his dedication to spreading holiday cheer. As the evening progressed, Charles's mind was far from the event. Every interaction, every smile he offered to the crowd, was part of a calculated performance. Beneath his jovial exterior, his thoughts fixated on Rosa. He had convinced himself that this Christmas Eve was the perfect time to confront her, to finally make her understand his feelings. The tree lighting ceremony, though vibrant and lively, felt like an agonizing delay to his obsessive plans. Back at Rosa's home, the atmosphere was quiet and warm. After a busy day preparing for the holidays, she tucked her daughters into bed and settled by the fireplace with a cup of tea. Despite the peace of the moment, the unease that had been building over the past weeks lingered. Rosa couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The memory of finding Charles's Santa costume in her living room haunted her, and she had taken extra precautions, double-checking locks and ensuring her home was secure. Outside, the snowy streets of Wintervale were still, illuminated only by the glow of Christmas lights. Charles, still dressed in his Santa suit, made his way through the quiet neighborhood. He carried a small bag filled not with toys, but with items he believed would win Rosa over: letters he had written, stolen trinkets from her home, and an old family photo of her he had somehow obtained. To him, this was not an intrusion but a necessary step in proving his devotion. As Rosa sat by the fire, a sudden noise outside startled her. She hesitated, debating whether to investigate or dismiss it as an animal. When she opened the door, she found nothing unusual, just the cold night air. But as she turned to step back inside, Charles appeared from the shadows, his imposing figure silhouetted against the faint light of her porch. Before Rosa could react, Charles forced his way inside, closing the door behind him. His expression, once friendly and warm, was now intense and unrecognizable. He began to pour out his emotions, professing his love and demanding she listen. Rosa, terrified, tried to maintain her composure, but Charles's tone grew increasingly erratic. His delusions of a perfect Christmas, a perfect life with Rosa, were unraveling in real time. The quiet streets of Wintervale were suddenly pierced by the sound of muffled screams, breaking the stillness of Christmas Eve. The chaos unfolding inside Rosa's home was hidden from view, but the nightmare had reached its peak. Charles's presence, so full of menace, turned the once safe space into a scene of terror. Rosa's attempts to reason with him fell on deaf ears as his delusions consumed him entirely. His words grew more frantic, his voice oscillating between pleas for her affection and angry accusations of rejection. Rosa tried to distance herself, stepping back toward the living room in hopes of reaching her phone or anything she could use to defend herself. But Charles anticipated her every move, his obsession having turned into a dangerous clarity. He blocked her path, his imposing figure and Santa costume creating a grotesque contrast to the warmth and joy associated with the season. He was no longer the community's beloved figure. He was a man driven by his distorted fantasies, willing to do anything to force Rosa into his imagined reality. Neighbors later recalled hearing strange noises that night, sounds they initially dismissed as holiday excitement or distant laughter. Some even mentioned hearing the faint sound of glass breaking, though none could pinpoint the exact source. The chilling truth was that Rosa was fighting for her life, trying desperately to escape the man who had once seemed so harmless. Charles, clutching a knife he had hidden in his bag, lashed out when Rosa continued to reject him. To him, her refusal was not just a personal slight but the shattering of his carefully constructed fantasy. In a moment of rage, he attacked, his actions swift and brutal. Rosa's screams echoed through the house before fading into silence. When the police arrived, the scene they encountered was horrifying. Rosa's lifeless body lay on the living room floor, surrounded by shattered decorations and the remnants of what should have been a peaceful Christmas Eve. Blood-stained the festive rug, a stark contrast to the cheerful ornaments scattered nearby. Charles had fled, leaving behind his Santa bag, which contained chilling evidence of his obsession. Inside, investigators found the letters he had written, detailing his twisted plans to make Rosa his, along with stolen personal items that revealed the depth of his fixation. The community was in shock. The man they had trusted with their children, who had symbolized holiday joy, had revealed himself to be a monster. Wintervale's festive spirit was extinguished that night, replaced by fear and heartbreak as the search for Charles began. Charles's flight from Rosa's home sparked a manhunt that consumed Wintervale. The idyllic town, once alive with holiday cheer, was now shrouded in fear and grief. News of Rosa's tragic death spread quickly, and the community rallied together, their sorrow mingling with outrage. For the first time in years, Wintervale's Christmas lights seemed dimmer, their glow unable to mask the darkness left behind by Charles's horrifying actions. Law enforcement immediately mobilized, deploying officers to comb through the snowy streets and surrounding forests. Witnesses described seeing a man in a Santa costume running through back alleys and into the woods, but the snow-covered ground made it difficult to track his movements. Patrol cars roamed the area, their searchlights piercing the night, while helicopters scanned the dense trees from above. Charles, once the town's beloved Santa, was now the target of a desperate search. Back at the scene, investigators meticulously combed through the evidence left behind. Rosa's home, now a crime scene, painted a chilling picture of Charles's obsession. The Santa costume bag was filled with unsettling artifacts, a diary outlining his plans, photographs of Rosa taken without her knowledge, and even a few of her personal belongings. The contents confirmed what Rosa had feared all along. Charles had been watching her for months, building a fantasy that ultimately led to her death. The search intensified as days passed with no sign of Charles. Then a break came on the third day. A hunter reported seeing a man matching Charles's description near an abandoned cabin deep in the woods. The police quickly converged on the area, surrounding the cabin in hopes of capturing him without further bloodshed. The standoff that followed was tense, with officers calling for Charles to surrender. Inside, he sat alone, clutching an old photograph of himself dressed as Santa at a past Wintervale event, his face hollow and unrecognizable. Charles's mind was a chaotic storm of regret and denial. In his twisted perception, he saw himself as a victim of unrequited love, unable to reconcile the consequences of his actions. As police negotiators tried to reason with him, he grew increasingly erratic. Hours passed, the winter sun setting and plunging the scene into darkness. Then, a single gunshot shattered the silence. When officers stormed the cabin, they found Charles slumped over, lifeless. In his hand was a hastily written note, scrawled with shaky handwriting. It read, "I only wanted to make her happy. The tragedy left Wintervale forever changed." The town, once a beacon of festive joy, became a solemn reminder of how darkness can hide behind even the brightest smiles. Rosa's memory was honored in the following years, but the shadow of that fateful Christmas lingered, a cautionary tale etched into Wintervale's history.